program is brought to you by Newsworks in cooperation with the City of Eau Claire. This program is simulcast on WRFP-LP 101.9.
I'd like to welcome you to the November 6th Planning Commission meeting. This evening, if you are planning to speak, please fill out a yellow piece of paper at the back of the room and hand it to Ned, who's going to raise his hand. We do attempt to conduct our public hearings in a relatively informal manner, with the constraint being the issues that are before us in an orderly and businesslike fashion. We give the applicant the opportunity to speak first, and then others, either for or against the proposal, are each permitted to speak once. We do request that everyone restrict their comments to the issue before us and avoid unnecessary repetition. First item on our agenda tonight is for recommendation for annexation 883 Grover Road to annex property from the town of Washington.
This is the property. It's located on the south side of Grover Road, just west of Tiffany Lane. It's 32.75 acres of land. There is one existing single-family home on the property. The parcel is within the sewer service area of the city. Sanitary sewer and water is available in Grover Road, and the request is consistent with our comprehensive plan. We've recommended approval.
Are there any questions for Daryl? I have one. How much of the property on the south is in the floodplain?
I'm not sure about the floodplain, but I do know quite a bit of this, as I call it, creek bottom, is not developable either by
it's steep slope.
Either steep slope or our ability to get sanitary sewer down there because it's going downhill.
Sure.
So.
Very good. Any other questions for Daryl? I don't see any. Is the applicant here? Okay, I don't see the applicant. Is there anyone who'd like to speak on this issue? If there's no one, we'll close the public hearing, and I'd be looking for a motion. Commissioner Peterson?
I'll move to annex the land.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, number 2, for recommendation, final plat for Hoyam Acres 7th edition.
This property is located west of Preston Road, south of West Frank. The area in yellow is the original Hoyam Acres. They're now proposing to expand that south into the Fanes preliminary plat area. This is the actual approved final plat for Hoyam Acres 7th edition with 14 lots within that yellow area. And as you head south, this is the preliminary plat approved by the Plan Commissions for the Fanes edition. These two roads basically connect. And the amendment then being requested is to expand Hoyam 7th, moving the outlot for our drainage pond slightly south and adding 4 more lots, which are out of the Fanes preliminary plat. You now have 18 lots for single-family development. There is 1 more lot for the existing home within the Hoyam original development. The amended plat thus adds 4 lots. Again, 4 of these lots come out of Fanes preliminary plat, which Plan Commission has approved. Outlot 14 is a stormwater facility. Outlot 13 is to be owned by the abutting so that the existing house here has a proper setback from the street. The name of this new street should be changed to Hoyam Lane so it matches Hoyam Lane across West Frank Street to the north. Utility easement requests are shown on the final plat, and we've recommended approval with the condition that the new street be Hoyam Lane. Any questions?
Commissioner Mitchell.
Thank you. Then do we amend the Fanes preliminary plat, or does that just get changed in that final plat?
The Fanes, they'll come in with a second phase someday, and that'll include the rest of their lots and the lots along Vine. A preliminary plat just says, here's how we're going to develop the property. You can do it in phases. We consider they've done one phase of their preliminary plat. In the second phase, it may be called Fanes, it might be called something else, but it'll be the same layout in terms of the lots someday, and they choose when they want to do that.
Are there any other questions for Daryl? I don't see any, thank you. Is the applicant here?
Good evening. I'm Mark Erickson with Kramer Land Design. I'm representing Mr. David Hoyam on this. If you guys have any technical questions related to the plat or anything about the future street extension, I'd be honored.
Are there any questions for the applicant? Remember, I can't see your little lights. Commissioner Klinkhammer.
There isn't any problem with the name change or anything, is there?
No, sir.
Any other questions? I don't see any, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak to this issue? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing, and I'd be looking for a motion. We have a motion,
I'll second.
and we have a second. Any discussion? Seeing Commissioner Klinkhammer.
I assume that was with staff recommendations?
Thank you for the clarification. Any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, number 3, for approval, site plan for a parking waiver for 201 East Lake Street.
This is the property at the corner of Lake and Graham Avenue. It's the former Boys and Girls Club. Within your packet is a floor plan showing the layout of the events center within the building. Also within your packet is a memorandum from traffic engineer who's here this evening, showing the location of this facility, and the green is representing a 500-foot radius from that building, and then the blue is representing an 800-foot radius from the building. And then the tables within her memorandum state the number of parking stalls within public or city parking lots within 500 feet of the site and within 800 feet of the site. It then goes on and describes in 2014 average weekday parking available, again either 500 or 800 feet from the site, and Saturday again within 500 and 800 feet, and then also gives us the numbers current 2017 average weekday, again 500 and 800 feet of the site. And these are the lowest numbers if you look at all the numbers within the chart within her memorandum. The applicant is proposing then to remodel this building for an event center with a capacity for 500 people. The actual capacity of a building is set with the building permit based on building and fire codes, and in talking with our building inspector, he expects that would be a maximum. He actually expects it might be slightly less than that, the capacity of this building. Based on a parking requirement of 1 stall per 4 persons, that would be 125 parking stalls is the required parking for this event center. The zoning code allows the parking requirement for commercial use to be within 800 feet of the site. And again, based on the memo that we have here in front of you from the city traffic engineer, it indicates the number of parking stalls within public parking lots, both 500 and 800 feet from the site. Based on this memo, there's 217 within 500 feet, 265 within 800 feet, we do believe there's available parking to meet that city code requirement, and we have recommended approval.
Are there any questions for Daryl? Commissioner Mitchell?
Thank you. So if over time, the parking lots that are currently available are no longer available, let's say they're, that the transfer center lot, maybe the Schlegel Milk lot, maybe the Riverside parking deck, all become multifamily housing
Yep.
projects. What does that do then to this project?
Nothing in terms of this project, because you're approving it at this time, and these changes, if they occur at some future date, basically means there's less available parking within the area. They'd have a grandfather right because they were there first. It's kind of like if you widen a street and change the setback of a building, well, you should have a grandfather right to keep that building because you were there first. The street widened, you didn't sell your property to create that reduction. It's the same principle. But it's something to keep in mind as we change these parking lots in the future, that either you're gonna have to replace the parking or be careful you don't develop all these parking lots, because they are being relied upon by not only this proposed business, but other businesses within the downtown area for their parking. So.
Commissioner Mitchell?
Well, I wasn't personally planning on
Okay.
replacing the parking lots, but I just wondered.
Are there any other questions for Daryl? Commissioner Peterson?
And those are city-owned parking lots?
Yes.
As opposed to privately owned, so.
Yes, and that's another factor. The applicant may make arrangements with private properties for the parking for this event center. And the event center has unique parking in terms of it's normally weekend and evening. And there may be available parking where it's an office type activity that's a day use that, yeah, we can rent you parking in the evening. So those types of things can also occur. We just made our calculation based on the public parking available.
Well, with them being publicly owned, there'd be less of a threat for them to be converted to
Yes.
other uses then too.
Yes.
Commissioner Klinkhammer?
Thank you. On the page where it says, has all the tables, table 1, 2, 3, and 4, statement at the bottom of that page states that the overall parking usage of the city maintained off-street parking lots within the facility show availability for parking during the Metro's proposed hours of operation, but I couldn't find those hours of operation within this document. If it's in here, I couldn't find it.
Again, her calculations are weekday average and weekend, so she did both calculations. She found that the least amount of parking is weekday average, and that's what we're showing you. I would guess the parking for this use, which is correct, it's not shown in here, is likely going to be more on the weekend, which means there's actually more parking available in these parking lots at that time, so. What she's showing here is that both of them have it. Had one of them not, then she would be raising the issue that we don't have enough parking on the weekend to handle this situation, but we do.
So we don't know what the hours of operation proposed are.
Unless they indicated it in their memorandum. You know, we just made assumptions that it could be open at any time, but my guess is event centers normally are a weekend and evening type activity.
Are there any other questions for Daryl? I don't see any, but I
Wait.
have one. Commissioner Peterson, go ahead.
On the bottom of their application, point 17, the remaining trash area site will be completed by November 20th. Do you know where they're doing their trash? Because that lot is pretty much taken up by the building.
Yeah, there's a back corner of the property that I believe their trash is, and you can ask the applicant that question in case I get this wrong. I believe they actually own this property also, which does have some parking, and I believe it's here is where their indicating their trash enclosure is. But
That
ask
prop-
the applicant that.
That property owner is owned by the owner of the Downtown Pizza, the Pizza Plus.
Yes,
You know
I
if
believe it
that's-
is.
Is that the same person?
I
Do you know?
believe it is.
Okay.
But you could ask them if they're here, and I think that's where their trash enclosure is here, shared by the two businesses.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Daryl, I have one.
Yes.
As downtown is developing, and we're adding a lot of things that are going to bring people into downtown at night, I envision, although I didn't draw it out, that the 800 and the 500-foot circles overlap each other so that there are times when we're counting a parking space more than once for more than one facility. At what point do we hit full? Because imagine in the future that you have a night where there's an event at the Masonic Temple, there's an event here, there's an event at the Confluence Center, and then you have something going on the Lismore, and
Yep.
at what point do we consider ourselves full?
The advantage of the downtown having a parking study and traffic engineering now keeping it up to date on a regular basis is that hopefully every year they'll update it again, and these numbers in these tables will change, and if some other use comes in, you'll see different numbers, but eventually you'll get to a point where you'll have a presentation, we'll be saying, well, we have a problem in terms of the parking that's available. Because you have to remember these types of uses vary in terms of when they may need their parking. If this was a retail use, they'd probably want it during the day. If it's a residential or office use, it's actually required to be tied to a contract. In other words, we do keep track of where these stalls are being used. When it's these other types of uses, we're a little bit more flexible because we understand that variation in time and how they get used. And we're going to keep track of that by updating these parking analysis on a regular, hopefully annual basis, so that these types of presentations will have updated numbers for you to show you how it is changing. But it is an issue as downtowns become more successful. Many say it's a good issue to have, a parking problem. Remember also, we're just calculating off-street parking. There's a lot of parking available on public right-of-ways that's not going into these calculations. So
Okay.
it is not an exact science, I can tell you that.
I was going to say, thinking proactively, is there a point, though, when you start to hit full, and I think of it as a bucket,
Yep.
where you start to say, okay, sometime in the next 24 months, we're going to have to start thinking about a new parking facility, a new parking garage on that end of town in order to accommodate that, or will we never reach that point?
It all depends on future development. I think the south side of downtown has less pressure for parking than the north side. The new Performing Arts Center, when that opens, it'll be very interesting if a Performing Arts Center and something's going on at the hotel is all occurring at one time. We were fortunate to build that bigger parking ramp up there, so we have that added capacity that hopefully will assist in terms of addressing that issue. All of that should be monitored on an annual basis so that successful downtowns can accommodate the need for more parking if we get to that point.
And that is something we're doing.
I hope so.
Good evening. I can say that we are monitoring the traffic. We don't have studies or counts data on an annual basis, but as development occurs, we are taking additional counts. So as I prepared for this site, we did go out and do spot location counts at different parking lots on the south side of the downtown area. We don't have current counts on the north side, but as the businesses or as the Performing Arts Center opens, then we'll start doing monitoring again, and we will update our downtown comprehensive parking plan that was done in 2015.
Very good, thank you. Any questions on traffic? I don't see any, thank you. Any other questions for Daryl? I think you're off the hot seat.
Thank you.
Is the applicant here?
Greetings, everyone. Benny Haas, Kate Haas, Sorry about moving a little slow. I threw out my back on Sunday, so I am in one of those pain modes. To touch on a little bit on some of the questions you guys brought up, we do own the Seaver Street property, which is the former laundromat to the south of that. Original plan when we were talking about a grocery store, that 2 buildings were slated to be torn down and used as a parking lot for the space. With the new business that's in between the bike and coffee shop, we're just going to keep our existing building as it stands. Right now, we'll have 13 parking spots available on that. That's what we're assuming for employees to take them off the other street. We have met with and are working on contracts with Right Way Shuttle and Cody Limousine to utilize First Street, State Street, UW Eau Claire parking lots as well. Jason Anderson is actually kind of fortunate that he's been a big proponent of that, to use those parking lots as it stood, with him now being the interim director for the Confluence. It's even a little bit easier, I guess, at that point. The YMCA is also, we're working on trying to actually have an ability or a time set up to actually have a sit down and utilize their parking lot as well.
Very good. Are there any questions for the applicant, Commissioner Peterson?
And the trash area site is going to be located on that south
Yeah,
side?
actually that alleyway, which is currently utilized for like Sojo House and Brent Douglas, they all use that former alleyway that the city had vacated. So, and we're just going to put up a little thing just to kind of make it a little bit prettier than most of the other ones haven't done that. We're going to try to be a little proactive in that sense. So,
Very good. Commissioner Klinkhammer.
I assume that your normal hours of operation will be evenings and weekends, is that?
for the most part, yes. I mean, we're kind of leaving it open for business conference meetings and things like that, but our main focus is more than likely going to be like weddings and large, retirement parties, banquets in that sense.
Are there any other questions? I don't see any. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to speak to this issue? Is there anyone who'd like to speak to this issue? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing, and I'd be looking for a motion. Commissioner Brenholdt.
I'll move approval.
Commissioner Mitchell.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Next item on our agenda is for approval, a site plan for a multi-tenant building Phase 2, 4230 London Road.
This is the site on the west side of London Road, south of Damon. It's Burger King. The Phase 1 building is complete here, or nearly complete. Phase 2 goes immediately to the north. And this actually shows the layout then of the Phase 1 building. The site plan you had before you, and then 2 more buildings are planned heading north. That's the site plan for the second building. This building's complete. It's the third building they're planning. Front and rear parking, shared access. And it'll look a lot like the building that's completed to the south. That's a 12,320 square foot building. It has parking for 49 vehicles, which is the required parking if this is to be used as retail space. It has a shared access with the building to the south. An easement should be provided for that situation. It also provides a cul-de-sac turnaround for the private road, John Street, for the mobile home park to the west. An easement should also be provided for that situation with the CSM that needs to be filed to create the lot for this project. They have a pedestrian link. They have dumpster enclosures. They have bike parking. They note exterior lighting will meet city standards. Their building elevation shows channel letters or cabinet-style signs, which we will further review with permits. They show front foundation plantings, street trees. They need to add 1 more tree, and they are subject to city forester approval. And they should provide a screening fence along the west property line for the mobile home park. Site grading, drainage, and other city services are reviewed in the report. We provided a draft letter that recommends conditions. Provide again the cross-access easement and the easement for John Street on the certified survey map to create the lot for this project. Provide a 6-foot high screening along the west lot line. We need engineering approval of grading. Signs we will review with permit, and street trees are subject to city forester approval. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions for Daryl? I don't see any, but I have one quick one. The cul-de-sac there, people cannot go from the cul-de-sac right into the parking lot, correct? There'll be a curb and then grass?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Daryl? I don't see any. Is the applicant here?
Good evening again, folks. Mark Erickson. Any questions, concerns? We agree with the conditions of approval. Should be no major shakes there, so.
Any questions for the applicant? I don't see any, thank you.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to speak to this issue? I don't see anyone moving. I'll close the public hearing, and I'd be looking for a motion.
I move for
Commissioner
approval
Lars.
with staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, we're just whipping right through stuff tonight. I wonder why. Next item on the agenda, for approval, a site plan for a mini storage facility at 631 East Madison Street.
This is the property. Madison becomes Germania, but still becomes Madison going this way down Putnam railroad tracks. That's what surrounds the site. The site plan shows these two buildings will remain on the property and be used for warehouse, and then they add 7 new mini warehouse buildings on the site. This access exists, this access exists. They do add one access for the backside of that building. And these appear to be, an applicant can correct me, pitched roof with brick siding. Some with big doors. So there's a variety of designs with this facility. Again, the 2 existing buildings remain. It adds 7 new buildings to the site. Site access remains the same other than this new curb cut on Putnam. There are 2 non-conforming billboards on this property, here and here. And there's a lease agreement we have now in our files that state that they're leased through December 31st of 2025. We place in the report the provisions of city code that says with site plan review, all 9 non-conforming signs are to be removed unless an agreement exists which prohibits this from occurring. Then the plan commission can require conformance with the provision at the expiration of said lease. They are showing street trees with the project. We would like a detail of this retaining wall and the pavement edge and the property line to determine what kind of landscaping should occur along Madison Street here. They note their exterior lighting will need to meet city standards. Site grading and drainage and other city services are reviewed in our report. We provided a draft letter with recommended conditions. Those are engineering approval of drainage, provide for staff approval a detail of that retaining wall and what landscaping will occur along the north lot line next to Madison Street. Their exterior lighting must meet city standards, and we'd recommend one additional condition to be added that's not in that letter. This is a condition on the property. The 2 non-conforming billboards on the property shall be removed on December 31st, 2025, as per sign code requirements. Any questions?
Are there any questions, Commissioner Klinkhammer?
Are both signs on the same contract, lease contract?
Yes, that's our understanding.
Commissioner Mitchell?
Thank you. This property is zoned I-1,
Yes,
and mini storage facilities are
permitted use, yes.
I can't see that in the zoning code. Is it called something else?
It's just called a storage or warehouse. It's warehouse facilities. It's up on the top there under general. There's like 5 categories of general warehouse.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. And the storage facilities are also permitted in C3 as well, right?
C3, correct.
Okay.
Commissioner Peterson?
There's currently 2 driveways at the bottom of the hill, and one of those will be removed and replaced with the one further up the hill.
That may be correct.
Well,
From what they're showing here.
I didn't feel the bump when I went in one and out the other,
Okay.
so I think there's 2.
That's, I think, yes. What they're showing here is they will have 2 driveways with, this one is up the hill further, yes.
And just one down below.
That's a good
that.
catch, yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Are there any other questions for Daryl? I don't see any. Is the applicant here?
Good evening, Sean Bohan, 1105 Elm Avenue, West Menominee. Project engineer with Advanced Engineering Concepts on behalf of the applicant. He doesn't have any concerns about the conditions that staff has recommended. Just here to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? Commissioner Klinkhammer?
Must have got in on.
I can't see your light, Terry, if it's on. Thank you.
If we added the condition that the billboards are to be removed at the expiration of the lease, is that an issue?
I do not see that. I believe that ends up being a requirement to begin with. We had another project on a couple of weeks ago or something that we had that.
They're aware of that. We failed to get it in the cover letter. We got in the report, but didn't get it in the cover letter. But they are aware of that requirement of code.
So, well, we need to add that into this motion, okay.
Are there any other questions for the applicant? Okay. I don't see any. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to speak to this issue? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, and I'd be looking for a motion.
I move for approval with staff recommendations with the additional condition being the removal of the billboard signs at the expiration of the current lease in 2015? Is that what you said?
2025.
I
All right.
guess, wrong decade.
We have a motion.
I'll second that.
We have a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda for approval, a site plan for mini storage facility at 2245 Prairie Lane.
This is Prairie Lane. Trying to think, Alpine Road. Magically becomes Alpine Road as it makes that curve there. This is the Tech College's facility out in Gateway Industrial Park. This is the one parcel that's not part of Gateway, although it was later annexed and has industrial zoning. It was an old concrete business. They are now proposing the mini storage facility. There's the site plan with the existing access to Prairie Lane being used. The one existing building would remain on the site, and then the layout of the 11 new buildings on the property. And these appear to be metal buildings with metal roofs. Again, it's one existing building, 11 new buildings. Site access is the same. Their landscaping, they do show the street trees along Prairie Lane. They're on the public right-of-way. In this case, there's utility easements and a ditch there. We don't believe that's a good location to be putting street trees, and are recommending they provide a 10-foot wide landscaped area on their property and move the street trees onto that location. It appears they likely have it here. They may need to widen it slightly here and shorten that building in order to get that to work. Their exterior lighting needs to meet city standards. Site grading and drainage and other services are reviewed in the report. The draft letter has recommended conditions of providing 2 copies of a revised site plan showing the street tree relocated onto their property within a 10-foot wide landscape area. We need an engineering approval of drainage and exterior lighting meeting city standards.
Are there any questions for Daryl? I don't see any. Is the applicant here?
Apparently our firm specializes in the mini storage design, so.
At least tonight, right?
At least tonight. Again, Sean Bohan with Advanced Engineering Concepts on behalf of the applicant. We don't have any issues with the conditions from staff. I'm here to answer any questions.
Very good. Are there any questions for the applicant? I don't see any.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to speak to this issue? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. And I'd be looking for a motion. Commissioner Mitchell.
I move approval with staff recommendations.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, next item on the agenda for discussion and direction, twin home standards.
The city manager requested staff to research provisions pertaining to twin homes and provide consideration of changes that may be needed for city policy or city code. A twin home is essentially a duplex, although a duplex is one owner. In a twin home, the lot is split into 2 parcels along a common wall, and now you can have 2 dwelling units with 2 owners. And the issues that arise with that change is long-term maintenance for utilities, the common wall, roofs, exterior painting, shared driveways, and other shared facilities. Under existing city code, we did place in the memorandum the exception in the zoning code. It allows you to split the lot in half and not meet lot requirements. We also would note that our building code requires a rated firewall if you put a lot line down the middle of that structure, and we find many newer duplexes now, they just build them with that rated firewall so that they can do it at some future date if they so choose. We also found state plumbing code is interpreted to allow a single service to a twin home since it's considered a single building, provided a document which indicates the piping and distribution arrangement for the property is recorded. So there you basically are providing the notice to these property owners that your sewer or water main may be running through his building, so you better make some arrangements on how to take care of that under the plumbing code of the state. So what we found is our existing provisions basically prefer a twin home over a duplex since we're allowing these exceptions within our zoning code. A rated firewall must be added, and again, this document must be recorded so that folks know you may have an issue in terms of how you're going to repair your utilities someday. We did research other communities. We found a good example on how they were dealing with these in Madison, and that's what we put in your report. With their approval of twin homes, they basically require separate water services except for dwellings that were built prior to their adoption of their ordinance. And then they allow the water service to be split within the terrace. A terrace is a boulevard area for those here in Eau Claire. And the sanitary sewer service, again, has to have separate laterals, again, unless the building was built prior to the adoption of this ordinance, in which case then they require a joint access and maintenance agreement to be put in place. And that seems to be the key in terms of what other communities are doing, is that when you do this, put in place some type of joint access and maintenance agreement. They do require separate gas and electrical meters, and then they do require joint access and maintenance agreements be recorded with the land division, which is normally done by certified survey map with the property. Based on our review, then we would recommend the following changes in terms of city provisions. For newly constructed twin homes, require that they have separate sewer and water laterals. Allow the city engineer to give an exception to that. For example, the lot already exists and it only has one lateral run into it. The city engineer may just say, well, let's tee that off in the front yard or the boulevard area instead of cutting open the street and getting it out there. Or it may say, oh, that street's kind of old, that's fine, go cut the street open and get your two services in. But for new developers that know they're going to be building twin homes, make sure they're getting separate sewer and laterals in for all the units. For existing duplexes, then, the desire to be split into twin homes, allow the exception to the requirement for separate laterals, but then put that maintenance agreement in place with the approval of the certified survey map for that lot split. Again, a rated firewall would be required for that situation. Always require separate water, gas, and electrical meters, and then require that joint cross-access and maintenance agreement to be put in place with the twin homes and with the recording of the certified survey map. And the simplest way to do that is that provision we have in the memorandum on the first page is simply to amend that provision and add to it that you got to put in a joint access and maintenance agreement when you create these lots. Cody, who's here tonight, gave us a copy of the documents he's recording with the twin homes he's been building within our community and in Altoona. And we did attach that as an example of the covenants and the party wall provisions they use to address that joint maintenance type of a situation. And we'd like to use those covenants and then draft example provisions that the city would make available to developers that propose twin homes and say, you're going to have to come up with something that's like this and then record it when you get your certified survey map to create the two lots for the properties. So we're here tonight to discuss the issue, see if the Plan Commission has any other thoughts on twin homes, and then we'll go and draft some ordinance amendments and get those through a hearing process sometime this winter. Any comments?
Are there any comments or questions for Daryl? Commissioner Mitchell.
So what was the problem that the city manager was looking at? The fact that the difference between a duplex and a twin home was not clear?
No, I think the issue is we don't require that joint access and maintenance agreement to be put in place. We found out Cody and the developers, some of them are doing it, others may not be doing it. And I think it's a good practice that be put in place so that the two property owners understand here's the way you address re-roofing that house or painting of that house or repairing your driveway or redoing your sewer or water mains or whatever, that it's laid out in a document somewhere that because of the common wall you have, that here's how you do that. It's similar to the idea of condominium plats, which that then takes care of your threeplexes, fourplexes, any other type of a situation within the community, they file association bylaws, and those association bylaws spell out all those types of maintenance provisions within the condominium association bylaws. Those are reviewed by the city attorney's office, and then they're filed with the condominium plat. So the only exception to that situation in city code is these twin homes that are being created by certified survey map.
Go ahead.
Going back to an earlier discussion of twin homes, and one person could still buy both homes
Yes,
and rent one and live in one, or rent both.
yes.
And then, so who then enters into the agreement?
It all depends on if they choose to place a property line between their two units. If they choose not to place the property line there and just call it a duplex, these types of provisions wouldn't go into effect. If they choose to place that property line down there between the two, and now they have two separate units on two separate lots, we would say, now you got to put these provisions in place, because once they do that, they could sell off those units. They may not sell off those units, they may rent them, but at least then these provisions are in place for if they choose to sell the units at some future date.
So the only thing that differentiates a duplex from a twin home is whether you call it a twin home and create the property line.
If you put the property line in there, then it's a twin home.
Okay.
Other than that, it's the same dwelling unit, yeah.
Commissioner Klinkhammer.
Thank you. As I was reading that document that Cody provided, at the time the developer has sold all the properties, then the people that have purchased within that development basically assume the responsibilities of the developer. And they can make changes and amendments to that document.
Yes.
How do we track that?
I don't think it's the city's responsibility to track that. It'd be like a condominium association. It's the city's responsibility to make the initial property owners aware that you have shared maintenance responsibilities or whatever with this property, and to put a document in place that allows those property owners to understand that. If at some future date they go and change those things, well, at least we made the initial effort to make sure they understand.
Okay. Excuse me. May I?
Go ahead.
I'm sure that the realtors in this room understand all this, but do we have any responsibility looking down the road 3 or 4 generations of ownership to make sure that the new owners are being made aware of this?
In my mind, we shouldn't. In my mind, the similarity are our condominium plats. We've been approving those for 30, 40 years. You lived in a condominium that had a condominium association bylaws tied to it probably 25 years ago. Mm-hmm. And that's the similarity in terms of what we're doing here, is making those folks aware of, maintenance responsibilities for the common elements within these things. So.
Okay.
Commissioner Peterson.
If the joint maintenance agreement is initially there,
Mm-hmm.
and one or the other owner wanted to change it, would they not have to get the permission of the other owner?
That's the way I see them written, at least in Cody's example, is that they both have to agree in order to make changes to these agreements. And I see Cody's has provisions in there about using moderators to resolve conflicts, stuff like that, but I don't get too much into that. I let attorneys draft that kind of stuff, but it's interesting all the language they have in there to try to address if conflicts occur between two property owners. Maybe Cody's got some examples he can tell us on how they resolve those conflicts.
But it isn't like one owner could totally put all the maintenance on the other owner.
Right.
Because they're both signatories or the...
I look at
signatures and ownership.
the one says, well, I have my roof shot, I'm gonna go re-roof it, and the other guy says, well, I don't wanna. well, what happens, you know?
Or if one wants asphalt
I-
shingles and one wants metal, or
Yeah.
one wants blue and one wants red.
I'm gonna paint mine, and the other guy says,
Yep.
well, I'm gonna paint it a different color, or what happens, you know? I mean, that's what these things should get into, so.
Okay. But it looks like if that agreement is in place initially, it's going to take action on both of the
Yeah.
parties to negate that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Doesn't it take the, whatever the board would be that replaces the developer with that within the development, all the property owners?
No, because these will only be tied to that single twin home. We're in a condominium plat like what you were in, it was tied to a much larger development, but this will be just each twin home will have
I see.
its
Own
set of
agreement.
rules. Yep.
Okay.
Are there any other questions for Daryl?
I got one.
Commissioner Granlund.
Is it worthwhile extending this to the next set of, say, a threeplex or a fourplex? I don't know at what point,
Yeah.
it's similar to a condo association. Is there a minimum size condo association that's worth having?
Once.
Or should we try to make sure there's no overlap of one type and another?
Once you get to a threeplex, the only way you can do it is by condominium. The only exemption that we're not covering is this twin home. So, and by state law, you got to file your association bylaws under a condominium plat, so that is covered.
Any other questions for Daryl? I don't see any. Cody, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I'll just talk quickly. I hadn't planned to talk, I didn't even plan to come here tonight, so. I guess there's a lot of confusion on what a twin home is, and the way I got into it, I started building them up in the Twin Cities, Hudson area 15, 20 years ago. So they were big, and even at that time up there. And from what I can understand, the reasoning is a condo, like what you live in, Dave, where, you know, it's all with the zoning and trying to fit as many people into an urban area as you can. But most people can't finance condos. Condo financing just got crazy difficult. So they came up with the twin homes, which is, and you don't have to, most of the places, that's why Daryl and the city manager reached out to me and wanted to know if we had any kind of documents like that, because most places, like when we started doing them in Altoona and they switched the zoning, Chippewa Falls, none of them required, New Richmond, Hudson, all these places, they don't require a party wall agreement between it. So it is kind of like the Wild West if it, you know, down the road if something happens. So our company started requiring those or doing it, recording on everyone, because I just think it's a good idea. And then a lot of those, Altoona, I know, required it in the same way. So that at least puts the responsibility, like it's almost like in a condo association, just with those units. So, and I think if they're well written, and you know, I mean, you can have problems on single family house neighborhoods the same way.
Do any of the twin home developments have any HOAs, homeowners associations with them where they all work as a group, or are they all completely individual?
The ones I've done haven't. What I've found, and I mean, we've sold hundreds of units in all these areas over the last 10 years, I would say. And what people like about it is they don't have a condo association. They get, a lot of these people are moving from the country, moving in, or, you know, the baby boomers, the empty nesters, and they're not ready to give up everything, all their responsibilities, so they still want to mow the lawn, they still want to shovel, they still want to do that stuff. And so if you start any kind of association, they balk at it.
Okay.
So.
Commissioner Klinkhammer.
Thank you. Cody, in those developments that you built 10, 15 years ago, have with I assume that you had a similar agreement even then? Okay. Have you been made aware of any issues regarding shared maintenance?
I honestly haven't. The oldest ones I have are New Richmond, and I think they're going on 14 years. And I still, because the market up there just collapsed during the crash. And so I still own 5 units and rent them, and they're alongside with ones that sold. And we just had that hailstorm this summer and hit New Richmond really hard and had a lot of insurance claims all through the neighborhood, and it all turned out fine. I was actually surprised how easy it was to make it work, just because like the insurance company with the owner worked with our insurance company and just made it, and it actually worked out real good for the people that live in the units that border ours, because we had our own roofers to go up there and do it, and it happened. Worked good. Beyond that, like Hallie, I have ones. They're kind of similar to a twin home. Now they took the twin home zoning, and they'll be like yard shed issues, or people putting up stuff that they shouldn't be, and then they called me because I think I'm still responsible for it. So I see stuff like that, but as far as like issues between the neighbors, I honestly haven't seen it. And I think what happens is you have people so packed in together that, obviously not everyone's gonna like each other, but they're all gonna watch over each other better than any development I've ever seen. I mean, that's where when I come into these meetings and people like hate twin homes, the twin home neighborhoods are better shaped than any neighborhoods I see, even the $750,000 single family houses, because everyone's so tight and will watch their neighbor like nothing else. Just like on Gables Place, and I dealt with the Gables Association, so I know all about associations.
Very good. Any other questions for Cody? Commissioner Mitchell.
I'd just say I'd appreciate your help with this. Thank you.
I honestly, I think and I'm biased, but I think it is one of the best housing choices there is for people, for our city, because it is, you're never supposed to say, and I can say it because there aren't any neighbors here, you're never supposed to say affordable housing. That's what everyone says, and I think that's bull. I mean, it's nice to get affordable, good housing. It helps all the rest of the neighborhoods, I think.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Are there any other questions or comments about twin homes?
Do we need to make a directive?
Wait a second. She was first.
I was just going to say, for me, I would go ahead and prepare whatever you asked for, code change for us to consider.
Okay. Anybody else have anything to say? As most of you know, I'm a mortgage lender, and twin homes are financed exactly the same as a single family house. So it does meet a simpler set of rules than condominium financing does. So it's a housing style that has really grown in popularity. Plus, it gives people a really brand new construction for not the exorbitant cost that often comes with it. So I've done quite a few of them. All right, next item on the agenda. Do you need any action from us, Daryl, on this, or just to go ahead? Okay. Any code compliance items? Any future agenda items? Any additions or corrections to the minutes? Does anyone want to go watch a football game? All right, seeing all of this, we are adjourned.
This program was brought to you by a cooperation between Newsworks and the City of Eau Claire. A transcript of this meeting is available for the hearing impaired. It will be available within 7 days of this telecast. call 715-839-4912 or TDD 715-839-1689. Or write Eau Claire City Clerk, P.O. Box 5148, Eau Claire, Wisconsin 54702-5148. Newsworks is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, please contact us via phone at 715-839-5067 or online at valleymediaworks.org.